Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to one more round with Josh Norris. Today I'm excited to have Dr. Chris Hargrave with me. If you guys get some stuff out of this show, make sure to like it, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel. But today we have Dr. Chris Hargrave. He grew up in central Missouri and started working at a very young age. He's a third generation Air Force as an aircraft hydraulic specialist. He deployed for OIF with the A-10 Warthogs in February of 2003. Deputy Sheriff. He became a deputy sheriff and re-enlisted into the Air National Guard as a firefighter. Then he became a doctor of chiropractic. He met his wife there, and they started their chiropractic practice called Life Aligned. Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, man, that's a lot. That's quite the resume.
Yeah, I've done a few things over the years.
So I know you said you briefly were in college and you decided, skipping majors or jumping around. And
yeah, it was really turned into. Every time there was a break, I was changing majors and trying this and trying that. And so it really seemed like the military was just a good place to go and be told what to do.
Yeah.
Instead of leaving it up to me was not getting me very far.
Awesome. So what was your time in the military like?
It was a good time. It was definitely a time that I really got introduced into, kind of that brotherhood of the military. Made some really good friends. I've literally got a group chat of guys that I met in 2002 that we still chat on a daily basis. And so I guess I would say that probably some of my lifelong friends I met and built those relationships. It just really kind of got my eyes open to the world as well, kind of growing up in the Midwest, small town, small college, really hadn't had a lot of exposure to a lot of things. First time I saw the ocean, first time I flew was to San Antonio for basic training. So
really?
Yeah, so it was a whole new experience for me and really kind of, I guess, got me started or kept me going.
Now, like you said, you were third generation. So, did you have aspirations of doing that at some point?
No, not necessarily. Actually, I was kind of rebelling against it. I kind of worked the free agent side as going in, I kind of went to all the recruiters. And Air Force One, I didn't give really much of a chance to because my dad was Air Force and both my grandpas were Air Force, and so I was kind of like, I want to do something different. But my mom ended up calling me. The actual recruiter had called her and talked to her, and so she called me and was like, well, can you please just give the Air Force another chance? It would mean a lot for your dad and your grandpas if you're going to go. And so that was kind of how I ended up going Air Force. And then actually that's what I've actually got a sleeve with both my grandpas. And then my dad worked on or guarded the Minuteman missiles back in the 80s. Here are my planes, the 130 and the A-10. And then my brother's actually in now, and he flies the C-17s.
Okay.
So he's in there too. And then both my grandpas are passed, so up on my shoulder is airplanes flying off, old bombers flying off into the sunset.
Man, that's an incredible piece. Who did that?
Ian Laughlin here in Mesa.
Okay.
With the Cobra Kiss tattoo.
Yeah. No, I mean, I see a lot of tattoos, and I'm like, why? But then you see something like that, and that's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I'm glad I waited so long to get it. If you'd left it up to me younger, I probably would have covered it with a tribal or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Thrown some barbed wire in it or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think people should be able to get tattoos until they're like 35.
35, yeah.
Yeah, because then their brain is like, okay, what sensibly do I want?
You have enough life experience to actually have something.
And a lot of times you have a little bit of money to actually invest into a really good artist
instead of going in and getting the one point. One.
So you're just at a prison. Sweet, you'll work.
You'll
when
do
you're
it.
younger. Little coat hanger and all that good stuff. So, but you said in the Air Force, what things did you learn there? Is there any big principles that kind of kept with you through life?
Well, I think it's probably that brotherhood is probably the thing that's really, really stood out the most for me. And really probably even, and I think maybe even in a deeper way that, I think we're all kind of looking for that deeper connection and that sort of thing. And when you go into the military, it gives you kind of that excuse and that thing to kind of make it okay. The rest of the time we're kind of protective of ourselves and we don't really open up that way. And so I think kind of getting that glimpse of what that could be. And then, of course, just learning about organizations and how the military is structured with officers and non-commissioned officers and then team leaders and those sort of things and all the way down and how to really structure that sort of thing from a personnel standpoint. And then also just on the documentation side of how to have all those policies and procedures, standard operating procedures, or whatever it is that you're calling them, and how following them and enforcing that all the way up and down, how important it can be. And then I'd probably say probably culture, learning a lot about just culture and how culture within an organization, man, it can make and break it. And so military wise, that culture is kind of forced, I would say. If you don't get on with it, you're not going to last very long. And in the civilian world since then, it's not quite as clear cut as that, but still in our business is trying to build a culture that goes along with it. And I think that was something that we struggled with in the beginning. And I mean, I guess we still struggle with it now, but really have how to have that culture built in. That's supported by all your policies and procedures, and then that's supported by the team, and it's really all kind of just how it all kind of comes together.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never really thought about that parallel with the military. I had an HR expert. She started her own consulting firm on a few weeks ago, Laura, and she was talking about all the policies and procedures. But like the military is like the perfect example on how to run a company. I mean, to a degree, you have your structure, your hierarchy, chain of command. You have policies and procedures for everything. Everybody knows what they're doing, who does what by when. And it's a good model of how to.
Yeah, I would even say strategic planning to a large extent too, because when you're planning a mission, you have certain checkpoints and go no go points because you have a plan, you have a perfect plan, and it never goes the way you think it's going to go. And so that principle too of learning how to set out on a mission, but have set points for yourself so going in, hey, if this goes sideways here, I can pivot into this, or I can pivot into this, and if that happens, then I can pivot in from here, and kind of having that strategic plan going in ahead of time. Military, some of those can be life and death kind of situations. Maybe our business. Well, I guess it could be life and death for our businesses at times. Yeah,
absolutely.
So lots of good parallels when you. I don't know that I've really thought about it until just sitting here and start talking about it.
Yeah. And so you said you got deployed in 2003.
Yeah.
Where to?
We were based out of Al Jaber in Kuwait, about 40 minutes outside of Kuwait City.
Awesome. What was it like there?
It was wild. I think it's a lot different now than what it was then. Talking to some of the people, and I don't actually know if we have anybody even left on Al Jaber, but when I was there, I think the thing that struck me the most was a lot of the leftovers from the previous Gulf War. We were there to invade Iraq again, and we were operating out of. Well, we weren't operating out of them, but there were still hangars that we had blown up back in the early '90s with holes through the ceilings. There were still minefields everywhere. We had rope pathways where we could walk. This is in Kuwait. They're not at war.
Yeah.
But there were still minefields everywhere. When we first got there, still a lot of exercising and that sort of stuff. Playing the war games. As maintenance, we didn't play quite as much as everybody else. But the first real world alarm was it was funny because we only had there was 4 guys in the same room together. We got there right at the tail end right at the beginning of the buildup. So we actually had rooms. Everybody that came after us got stuck in tents.
Oh wow!
So we snuck in right at the very end and had a room, but the room was designed for 2 people, and we had 4 guys in it. So you couldn't open everybody. There was like it was like playing a game of which locker door you could open at the same time and who could get changed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's only about 2 hours out of the day that we were all asleep at the same time, and that was when the first alarm red went off, and you had the air raid sirens and all that stuff going off, and we're waking up and we're like, thought we weren't exercising anymore. Like, why are they? And it was like, oh wait a minute, no, they're not. So all of us are jumping up, and then I would say by the second or third one of those, we realized that they weren't going to hit us with anything, and especially down in Kuwait. And then we went up from there, did a little bit of convoy security riding up to Talil. So actually, I was still there during the day. I've got a picture somewhere of myself standing in front of a Saddam mural before all those got torn down. I was 19 or 20 at the time, so it was more just kind of taking it all in, and we played a lot of basketball, horseshoes, that kind of stuff in between. And then when it got busy, we got busy, and so it was nice in a lot of ways.
How long were you in for?
I was active for about 5 years. And then if you count my guard time and reserve time, I was probably 8 or 9, so in that range, yeah.
Yeah, and so you got out though, and you became a deputy sheriff.
Yeah, I got out. Turns out that the recruiter lied a little bit.
Yeah.
And when saying that that your job is just going to transfer to the civilian world, and especially being a small town, there really wasn't a lot of options as far as doing hydraulics. I looked at John Deere, I looked at Caterpillar, those sort of places. Worked in a factory for a little while, and it was just brutal work and didn't pay anything. And I was, and so started looking around, and didn't have a degree, but had the 4 years of military service and a DD-214, which is easy requirement for law enforcement. And so applied to a couple of different spots there, and got hired and started doing that.
Nice. But you never had any as a kid, you didn't want to be a police officer or anything.
I don't know any more than any other job. I don't remember that being a major job. I remember wanting to be a veterinarian. I remember a lot of things like wanting to work with animals and that sort of thing when I was a kid. But no, I don't think so.
It's interesting. I was just had a friend of mine, Jerry, on, and he used to be a cop, and growing up, he never wanted to be a cop. It's just, but he had to put food on the table, and that's the job he ended up taking, and it worked out. He was on the force for 18 years. But
I think a lot of those guys make the best cops, to be honest with you. The guys who don't know, that really can. It's not part of their identity. It's a job they do. It's a job they want to do well, but it's not necessarily part of their identity. And you don't see those guys getting caught up in so much because when you're dealing with the public, it is personal for them, and so they are generally often going to attack you personally. And when you don't have that ability to understand that I'm just here to do a job, like none of this is personal to me. Those personal attacks tend to have more effect, and then you start seeing a lot of things that we see today sometimes. Where maybe where you do see a time when an officer does something questionable. A lot of times, to me, it appears that's a lot of it is because they take it personal, and I feel like that's because some of those guys really have it tied up in their personal identity that they can't see. They don't see it as both ways.
Makes sense. What was your time like on the force?
I very quickly got to that point of where it just wasn't personal to me, and so for the most part, it was pretty good. Had a really good time. I'm trying to think. I spent about 3 years. I think I spent about 3 years working in the jail. Then I went to about 3 years on patrol, and then I went back to the jail for a little while. It started. I definitely started spiraling towards the end of that time period. I'd gotten divorced. I'd made an enemy with a sergeant who went on to become a lieutenant, then a captain, and then a major. They might have promoted him to God by now. He was definitely the wrong guy to make the enemy with, and he really made it kind of his mission to get rid of me. And then I made it easy. And, after it was all said and done, I was pretty young, pretty arrogant, and like I said, spiraling. Going through a divorce, and going through all that, really. That's kind of my rock bottom kind of point. And after I left the sheriff's department, by that point I'd already left the guard as well. Guard actually got a medical for some asthma issues, and being a firefighter, not being able to breathe, kind of important.
It helps.
Yeah. So by the time I actually ended up kind of burning all those bridges with the sheriff's department and leaving, I was sitting on my couch I went to Walmart, bought a $240 laptop, and was going through Monster.com, and I don't know if Indeed was a thing then, but 2 or 3 of those different sites, and just applying for jobs and trying to figure out what I was going to do, and then wound up going back to grad school.
How did that come about? Becoming a chiropractor?
That's a wild story. So I was doing a couple odd jobs here and there. I'd cashed in my retirement, and so I was kind of living off of savings. And I lived in an apartment complex, had my own apartment, and there was always a big party on Saturdays. And so one day I was hanging out down there, and a couple of the guys there, I was just drinking beer, and they were next to me talking about their schooling. They were chiropractors, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Then I had one of the odd jobs I was working was I was still bouncing at a bar, and one of the barbacks there was in chiropractic school. And then I think one day, I think while I was in the middle of applying for, because I was working at the bar, so I had all day, every day to apply for jobs. I must have sent out 200 resumes and applications, and I got nothing back. It was no, I'm sorry, it was not. It was like 2012. So the economy was still kind of recovering. There just wasn't many jobs, and so I think a commercial came up for that or for the college, and I was like, well, it just keeps coming up. So made a call, start talking to him. Kind of a few things. It kind of went back and forth for a little while. Finally, I told him, I said, if you can get me my prereqs done in one, because they did trimester semester. If you can get my prereqs done in one trimester, and I can start the DC, the grad school program, the following trimester, because I just didn't want to put it off much longer if I was going to do it. And they made all that happen, and I got started. And I actually, I was never even adjusted prior. I'd never been to a chiropractor, and I enrolled in chiropractic school.
No kidding.
First time I got adjusted, I was a student there. And then, met my wife, and now she is also, she's third generation chiropractor. So her grandpa's a chiropractor, her aunt's a chiropractor, and then she's a chiropractor. And so, I think she considered being a PT for a little while, and then ended up switching to chiro. And so then that's where I met her. We started dating fairly shortly after starting. A little bit. I mean, we took a little bit of time, but yeah. That's what we got going there.
Cool, man. So you went through chiropractic school, and then you're like, did you automatically want to go and start your own business, or did you want to go work for somebody?
Yeah, so I think it was really while I was in school, and I started having, even before, because I'd considered doing a business degree first. And I knew that I'd worked for the government. I'd always pretty much had a government job, either military or law enforcement. And my experience there was, it's bureaucracy. I mean, it's pure and simple. It's just bureaucracy and dealing with that and watching, all of them, watching guys that couldn't do the job they were in get promoted because they wanted to get, you can't do that job. We'll promote you and let you supervise it.
Right.
And then we'll get the guys that can do it, doing it for you, and we'll make it work that way. And that's a pretty common thing to see in bureaucracies from what I've seen. And so, just not really being happy with that, and not really feeling like there was as much integrity in that world as what. And then I really figured that most of corporate America was probably very similar. That there probably wasn't a lot of integrity there either. And so, so I just kind of got into where I just wanted to start my own thing. And then I also said, when I left the sheriff's department, I was one of those guys that I was one of the single guys. So, if something was going down, you could call me and I'd probably be there. 99% of the time, if I got a phone call, if something happened and they needed somebody quick, I was one of the guys that they could call for that. I worked 70 or 80 hours a week. Like I led or I was up in the, chasing DUIs, those sort of things. And I was always kind of in that upper level there, but the day I quit, they didn't miss me, and so that really struck me that I wanted to build something that couldn't exist without me.
Yeah, you don't feel replaceable.
You're not replaceable. Yeah. Now, being on the entrepreneurial journey, now I think most of us spend our time trying to go the other way, right? We're trying to build a company that we don't have to do all the work in.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be replaced.
So it's kind of funny how I got to that, where I was like, I want to go somewhere where I can't be replaced, to now I'm just trying to figure out how to either replicate myself so that I can be replaced.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. And then also being older and coming through, you kind of know. I feel like that in the chiropractic world, I feel like it's kind of changing now. There's a lot more integrated type practices. You see chiros in, especially if you go to California, you'll see chiros in hospitals. You'll see them in clinics. You'll see them in big corporations, and you see a lot more of those. I really hadn't seen any of that though when I was coming out, and so most of the people that I saw were getting offers for $35,000-$40,000 a year, with guys who wanted they didn't know how to build their company any bigger, and so they're literally trying to hire associates to come in and try to get them to build their practice bigger. And I really just felt like that was backwards. Like I felt like that as the owner, you should build your practice to where you need the extra help. Then you add the extra help, and then you continue building. And I feel like chiropractors, by and large, have done it the other way around. And so kind of seeing that and having those thoughts really made me want to go and just bite the bullet right off the bat. Like it's going to be a struggle, but I'd rather get it over now versus going and learning how other docs are doing it for a couple of years and then going and doing it myself. I kind of felt like that curve was going to happen, that learning curve was going to happen either way, and so I might as well get it done quick.
Yeah, no, just
and then figure
take
it
it
out.
quick.
Yeah.
So, what made you guys decide to move out to Arizona then?
That was really, so our families are pretty much spread out everywhere, and we narrowed it down between, we were looking at kind of like Eastern Tennessee, Western North Carolina, and then out here. And out here was just because, so she's got some grandparents in Tucson, but then also we'd taken a road trip out here and just drove through the desert, and I find it very therapeutic.
Yeah.
And then after living here, I love living in the desert. But also, it also came down to, I was stationed on the East Coast. I grew up in the Midwest. Erica grew up in Colorado. Then went to school in Kansas City. So for me, I just wanted to go somewhere I hadn't been before.
Yeah.
So that was kind of there really wasn't any I think after getting here, I'm really thankful because, man, the growth that's here and the opportunities that are here is insane. Like, yeah. I don't know, if it's because I pay more attention now, but I just I can't imagine anywhere else being such a good place to live right now if you're an entrepreneur.
I agree. Well, and your practice is in Queen Creek, and Queen Creek over the last 15 years has just thrived on every level.
Yeah, when we were looking at the demographics there to bring in an office, a lot of places will use like a 1 in 25, so 2,500 population for every chiropractor. So you got a town of 25,000, you could have 10 chiros there. I think that's considered pretty saturated. But when we started running those numbers out there, I think there was roughly 10 chiros there. Queen Creek proper was about 30,000. But if you took the Santan, the unincorporated area, that was another 100,000+ people. And so we were literally looking at this spot saying, there's 130,000 people here, and there's only 10 chiros here. Like there's actually a need here for that. And so getting that open there, and then it's just continued. I have no idea what the population is now, but I think Queen Creek is about double. I think Queen Creek's pushing 60 now. I think, and then Santan, I'm sure is. Yeah.
Probably 150, 200.
Probably 150. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
It's a great area out there, and it's so secluded. It's not the right word, but it's the word I'm going to use. To where like when you're out there, you're pretty much using businesses out there.
Yeah.
You're not coming into town to do all this stuff. You're not finding a chiropractor in Gilbert. You're using somebody up there. So
it's still you still feel I agree. You still kind of have that little bit of isolation. I don't, another few years you might not feel that anymore as everything continues to build. But
yeah, and then it will. What's it like working with your wife? Running a business together.
Yeah. So, and this is what started our podcast when we started out of school was we wanted to find, because we got told all the time, like, you're not, like, you shouldn't work with your wife. Like, you guys are going to fight all the time. You're not going to talk about anything but business. But we knew a few couples that were doing it successfully. So that's what we started trying to interview them and learn from them on what they were doing. Like I said, it got really redundant. And I think now, we were actually talking about this just the other day, I feel like it gets redundant because it's just different for everybody and how it goes. But if you can get to where you're clicking, and I really do feel like we do very well together, it's amazing to watch where the things that I know and I do end, she picks it right back up there. And a lot of couples will talk about, we've got friends that work together and that sort of thing, and they talk a lot about managing those expectations and those sort of things. And I really think it goes deeper than that because, okay, well, and just to keep it simple, if my expectation is that Erica's going to take trash out, at the end of the week or what, obviously, just that as an example, and she's sick on Friday, of course I'm going to pick it up and take it, right? And so I think that it really comes down to being able to communicate with each other objectively and without judgment. It's kind of an extension of your marriage to some extent. If the communication within your marriage, if you can be objective about it and you can not have the judgment towards the other person, it makes us better. And I think the same way with working together. the danger and I would say that most of our issues and our struggles have come from just if something's going that I'm not happy with, and then I let myself go down that pathway of thinking like, well, she's letting this happen, and she's doing this, and she's doing that. She didn't stop that. She didn't correct that. And you start like building up this big story in your mind about how bad that other person is to work with, when the honest truth was, it wasn't anything like that to start with. So I think that if you can get to where you're pretty objective in your communication and pretty objective in your business, it works really well, because you literally I've got a partner that I can trust with everything, and how many of us have it, how many other entrepreneurs have a partner that way, that they can literally say, I mean still spouse, but within that to really say that I've got a partner that I really can trust 100% here. So I think there are challenges, but they can be overcome. And then I think that when you truly overcome that, it is a thing of beauty when you have both people working with both of their strengths coming out. It's really powerful.
Awesome. Did you guys divide up, like, she handles the books and you handle marketing, or?
Yeah. So when we started, we've kind of switched. So when we started, the thought was, if you're going to go out and cold call and you're just going to walk into businesses and that sort of thing, she's a lot, just appearance wise, she's going to get a lot farther than I am. If I walk in there, tattoos, big beard, nobody wants to talk to me. She walks in, she's going to be a little bit more approachable. So when we started, she was very much on the outside marketing and that sort of thing. Then I handled a lot of the insurance and credentialing and all the kind of the back end stuff. Now that we've gotten really going, and we don't really do the cold calling, like the true cold calling stuff really anymore. It's really relationships that we already have. So now it's almost flipped back. It's totally on the insurance stuff. I don't touch insurance. I understand it. I know what we're doing with it. But at the end of the day, I don't touch the day-to-day administration of it. I'll look at the numbers. We'll make decisions together on what we're going to do with things. But she's the day-to-day on handling insurance, and now I'm a little bit more on the outside marketing. And then within the office, I have a little bit more of a sports background. She's got a little bit more of a pediatric, prenatal, that sort of background. And so, but really, as far as patient-wise goes, it just kind of flows everything together, really. But if she's available, then she'll treat the pediatrics. I'll treat the sports. But we've worked together enough that I can treat her prenatals the same way that she would, and she can, for the most part, treat the sports patients the same way that I do. So. And that's I guess that's kind of where I'm talking about, that we really have over the years managed to really blend together pretty well. Yeah.
Good yin and yang, it sounds like.
Yeah, a lot of that. And so with the new company coming on, I'm interested to see how that works, because with the new clinic, neither one of us can do any actual work in it. We don't have the certifications or anything to do the work. So we are equal. We're strictly equal with that. We don't have, there isn't that divide. And so there's still a little bit of it. Like, I'm still kind of handling a lot more of the logistics, the bigger logistics, and she's a little bit more on the insurance and that sort of stuff. But a lot more closely working. So we're having to kind of find our rhythm there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. And how long have you guys been in business?
We are coming up on 5 years now.
5 years,
yeah.
Sweet.
July will be 5.
That's great. And what's on the horizon? Anything new?
Well, I think that really working on and growing our drug and alcohol rehab, I think is going to be probably the biggest focus. We're actually really trying to get into. We've met a couple folks, and I guess we're going to call her a facilitator today. We haven't actually settled on what her actual job title is. We'll call her a facilitator. She came out of working with kids and families and placements and that sort of thing. And then also we've got kind of an already existing business relationship with some folks who own operate a not-for-profit that helps kids that have been sex trafficked. And so we don't have we don't have what it takes right now to work with kids, but we want to help them as much as we can. And so through our drug and alcohol center, we want to focus on the parents of those kids, and hopefully perhaps get those relationships with the organizations that work with them while they're still in the families. That maybe we can do some good there. We're really doing I'm calling it kind of a boutique style, where it is it's a more developed program. We're not just focusing in on the addiction and that sort of thing. We're also teaching life skills and those things along the way, so that you actually, otherwise, addiction is something that you're always going to have. And if you're not given tools to build the rest of your life, how are you going to go back? And your chances of going back to those addictions is much higher. And so we really want to try to make a big impact there. And it seems like that's one of the things that we've been seeing a lot since we've come here, is just that is a big thing here. Like, that happens a lot with kids and those sort of things. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of take an active role in helping with that. So
that's awesome.
That's what we're the most excited about right now, I think.
Cool. And where can everybody find you?
Instagram is where I'm most active.
Okay.
Dr. Chris Hargrave.
Okay.
Yeah, Instagram is probably the best place, but I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Obviously, me and the wife have a podcast as well. iTunes and Spotify for that. Yeah.
Awesome, man. It was fun talking with you today, man.
Yeah,
You have a lot of good things going on, and
Yeah.
guys, if you need a chiropractor out in Queen Creek, they're who your go-to. And then obviously, drugs and alcohol. If you know anybody who's dealing with that, the rehab center would be great. So, hey, thanks for tuning in today. Remember, guys, if you like this, like it, put a comment, share it out. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.